How you guys doing? Eugene Johnson here, founder of Make Your Mind an Asset, and I'm super excited. Today is going to be our first released interview with a friend of mine, a business leader. This is somebody who's been an entrepreneur for over 20 years, has had a tremendous amount of success with dozens of employees. This is somebody who sourced multi-million-dollar deals, has worked with companies like ADP and AOL and Merrill Lynch and Siemens and government agencies, and have done incredible stuff inside of their business. I'm super excited to release this interview because I think that there's some incredible nuggets that you'll get a chance to take away from and be able to build your business, to be able to build your dreams in your future. This is somebody who went after their goals and went after their dreams and was able to create some success. So I want you to get a chance to hear her insights, hear her philosophies, and be able to implement some of these things into your businesses. And in the meantime, I want the lurkers, the people who are watching and not commenting below, that's you, yes. Comment, share with her, what did you get from it? And that's what I want you to do. I want you, after the video, after the interview, I want you to comment below, even during the interview, comment below and say, hey, this is a great point that she made. So leave a comment, remember to subscribe, and I hope you enjoy. So Rebecca, how are you?
I'm well. Nice to see you.
Good to see you again. Good to see you again. I'm excited to get a chance to sit here with you at your office. And I know I wanted to kind of start this by starting about like when we met, right? And I don't know if you remember me bringing this up to you, but when we were in those circles, but
right.
I was just saying, man, your energy. It's like strength-wise, like I was like, you've got to be doing something great because the way you presented yourself. I mean, because we were around a lot of people that day, so you could tell the people who have a clarified direction and where they're going and know what they're trying to do. And I could tell that off the back with you, so that was pretty cool. So it was good to get a chance to connect with you again, and I've been following you since then. So. Probably ask you some personal questions here and there. But so here's what I did want to start with. Because I've been following you so much and watching, I realized that you are a little bit of a personal development nut.
Yes.
Like myself.
Yes.
A big reader. You have a book club. So tell me about that. Tell me about the whole personal development, the growth. Why you read so much. Things of that nature.
It probably was about 3 or 4 years ago. I realized that, and I've always been an avid reader, but I was reading actually mostly fiction, and I just realized that I was. Stagnating is probably too big a word, but I was definitely not evolving at a pace that I thought was particularly good. I didn't have much momentum.
Yeah.
I was doing a lot of things. I was a new parent. I started a business, all of these things. But at the same rate, I just didn't feel like I was kind of going after my dreams or pursuing anything. So as a result, I actually stumbled across Brendan.
Oh, okay.
And with that, took one of his online courses, High Performance, and then just started to read all sorts of books from that particular industry. And it has really been transformative for me. In the last 4 years, my life has changed dramatically as a result of that. And I now average about 2.5 books a week. I do one book. And then I do a book and a half on audio because I travel a fair amount, or I'm in my car, so I can, pop in the headphones and not while I'm driving.
Wow, that's a lot. Two books a week, 2.5 books a week. Wow, that's a big thing. So what would you say is your most impactful book over the last 4 years?
I think there's two.
Okay.
One is called Mindset by Carol Dweck, and it really just talks about the power of your thoughts and your mindset around how you pursue things.
Yeah.
And depending on what that is, you will have a positive outcome or potentially a negative outcome. But that's within your control and your context. And it was really powerful to read. And it's not that you don't know those things, but for some reason the examples that she gave, you could really relate to. It wasn't sort of out here in the ether, like, what, I can't, too scientific, I don't get it. No, it was really clear. Yeah. And then the second one is one I'm reading now called Decide. And it really talks about the distinction between how people make decisions and how most people are steeped in dealing with kind of the pain side of things, which is the urgency. Like, oh my God, I got to do my to-do list. Oh my God, my laundry. Oh my God, I got to make the meal. And you put aside the things that actually gain you momentum in life, right? Like, I want to learn to speak Spanish. I want to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. I want to create some curriculum.
Yeah.
Those are the things that really fill your tank, right?
Yeah.
But those are the things you always put off. So how to sort of grapple with that and make time for that, and it's really well done as a book. So that's what I'm into right now. That, and I'm reading Michael Beckwith is on my iPod.
Okay.
Doing a little spiritual liberation. So that's my other one.
Awesome. Okay. So you started reading books 4 years ago, as far as like personal development, informational products, things of that nature. Who's had the biggest impact on you? And I'm guessing Brendan is in there somewhere. But who are some of the people in that genre that has had the biggest impact on you, as far as just training, coaching, and pushing you the way you want to go?
I really would say Brendan Bouchard has probably had the biggest influence on me, and he's certainly the one I've sort of followed most regularly too. I mean, what I like about Brendan, I think he's extremely smart. I think he's delved into a realm of the industry in a really, I think, deep and meaningful way, and I actually like how he provides you information. And I don't always feel sold to, because sometimes in this industry you can feel like you're being, and it's okay. I mean, everybody's got to make a living, but you sometimes feel like there might be something might be a little bit disingenuous. Whereas with him, he feels to me very authentic, and his message is really clear. He gives you very straightforward instructions as to how to pursue certain things that you might have, for instance, at Experts Academy. Yeah. So for me, he's really been my head guy. But I've also, Napoleon Hill, I just finished Outwitting the Devil. I mean, I've read all of his books as well.
That book is amazing.
Awesome book. I just read 3 Feet from Gold as a result of that book. That was produced in conjunction with the Napoleon Institute, the Napoleon Hill Institute. Tony Robbins, I have never been to any of his seminars, but I've certainly done some of his reading, and I know that Brendan is clearly a protege of him.
Very much so.
Jim Rohn, I mean, obviously passed away, Legend. But terrific. Really, also has been really helpful. And sort of again, a lot of it, and that's why I think the Carol Dweck book, Mindset, had such an influence on me, because it really does just. I mean, what they're all saying is the discipline around yourself is how you manage your outcomes and your results. And a lot of that has to do with positive thinking and your mindset.
Absolutely. And it's funny that you mentioned Napoleon Hill. My first book a friend of mine gave me was Think and Grow Rich. And I was 18. And I picked up this book, and I was just like, I don't know what this guy is saying. So it was so difficult for me, that first personal development. And I thought that all of personal development was this way. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I don't know if I can get into this. It was difficult. But then my next person after that I got introduced to was Jim Rohn. And
okay.
A big shift between like how you deliver the message.
Right.
And Jim Rohn was just super simple, and it was like, yes, okay, I get it now. This makes sense. And then it was able to develop from there. So that's pretty cool. Okay. So a couple questions I did want to ask you. So let's do this. Let's talk about you went to Boston University.
I did.
For political science.
I was a poli-sci econ major with an acting minor.
And now you're an entrepreneur.
Yes.
So
it's very strangely. I was actually, my sort of goal and dream was to pursue acting.
Okay.
And in my senior year, right in the beginning, I had applied to some acting programs in LA and in New York, and got accepted into those. So decided to defer a year, and I traveled out to Seattle thinking, I'm going to live out here for a year and just kind of feel the vibe and this, that, and I had like 3 jobs. Made a fair amount of money saving, and I also, lived like a pauper there, because I was just a fresh out of college student, and decided to travel a bit. So I was going to defer a second year, and decided to travel a bit. And then I had a little bit of, I got sick. I had a little bit of a cancer scare, and I ended up being fine. It was no problem. Everything was benign, but I ended up having to come back. And as a result of that, I came back to D.C., where my parents had just moved back from Spain, is where they were living. So I came back here, and we'd always had a house here, but I didn't grow up here my whole life. I lived overseas most of my life, and decided that okay, before I go back into the acting, let me check it out and see what I like about it. And so I worked at a couple theater companies and realized what I really liked was the behind the scenes. I was like the whole, you're too tall, you're too short, you're too blue, you're too red, you're too, fat, too skinny. I was like, oh my God, I couldn't do it. I was like, that would irritate me. And I don't think I had the sort of personal stamina to deal with that. Yeah. So what I really liked, though, was that at 6 o'clock the curtains go up. Mm-hmm. Ready or not, here they come. And that's what really appealed to me. So then that's where I started to pursue kind of the events industry from the behind the scenes. And then when I was 26, I started my company. And the company I had been working for was a catering company in town, because food is also a big love of mine. And they actually helped me because I continued to consult for them. Mm-hmm. And then I was pursuing my business and the start of my business at 26.
So what was that? So in between the time that you got out of college to the time that you started your business, it was a plethora of different jobs that you did. Anything like life-changing, like would you say, like what job made the biggest impact on you to kind of give you a little bit of that entrepreneurial mindset?
I think it was actually, I started out at a catering company, a very large one here in town, in DC, and started out in a sales position. Didn't love the sales side of it, and decided I didn't think it was for me, and they asked me to handle a particular project for them before I was going to go. So I did that, and I realized, oh my gosh, I love these kinds of details. And so they actually created the position of director of operations. And for me, that was my turning point. Because what I realized is, and I was only 23 or 24 at the time, what I realized is, you can make it happen based on the amount of effort you put forth, the amount of energy you provide, the amount of sort of positive approach that you take can really have an impact. And it doesn't matter how old you are, people will give you responsibilities and trust you if you do a good job and have the right attitude. And with that in mind, I knew that at 26, I wanted to expand beyond what I was doing, and I was willing to take the risk because a lot of people believed I could, based on just that energy that I was, putting out there.
That energy from when we first met.
There you go. It follows me to this day.
Gotcha. Okay. So you took the path to, on your way to going to become an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about, because you've been in business. I know maybe everybody in the audience maybe hasn't gotten a chance to meet you before. So you've been in business for over 20 years.
Yeah.
I mean,
I've had my own company for 19,
almost 20 years. So and you work with major Fortune 100 companies, AOL, Merrill Lynch. This goes on and on, right? So most entrepreneurs would love to be in business 2 years, much less almost 20, right? So let's talk about the first year of business for you. What was that like? Because that's where really the rubber hits the road for most entrepreneurs. The average entrepreneur quits after the first 12 to 24 months. So let's talk about like that first 12 to 24 months. Well, like, did you go through any ups and any downs? I'm sure you did.
Depressed. I mean, I sat in my pajamas crying half the time, going, "Oh my God, is my phone going to ring?" Being an entrepreneur, as you say, is a big roller coaster ride, and it's one of the greatest rides that you'll ever take. But I think when you first start out, I knew I didn't have a lot at risk, but what you don't realize is how much emotional stamina you need to sustain the energy to pursue that particular dream, because you feel like you're failing all the time because your phone's not ringing, you're not generating income, you're having to be the accountant, the salesperson, the doer, the worker, the assistant, the executive. I mean, you've got to play all these roles. And then the anxiety of also just staying afloat. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is that you've got a lot of people who support you, but you got a lot of people who are like, honey, you better get a job. So with that in mind, and it's not because they're ill-meaning, it's just that they aren't quite, frankly, well-meaning, but because they are short-sighted in their outlook, they just don't see the vision. Yeah. So you've got to sustain yourself against all of that. So fortifying your world is the advice I would give anyone. Wow. And just trust yourself, fortify your world with people that will help push you and not let you give up, because you are tempted throughout that process. Yeah. I mean, that doesn't ever end either. That's the other trick. I mean, even now, I can't ever see having a job and, sort of working for other people, but at the same rate, you still go through those emotional cycles.
Ups and downs and trying to figure it out.
Yeah, what's next?
The problems never stop, right? Another level, another devil, right?
But there are also challenges, and they also have they help you evolve and grow and be bigger and better, and I don't mean just financially, but I mean sort of just as a person, right? You deal with more, you have more, you can cope with more.
So tell me, what's one scenario, one situation that happened in the early years that you say, man, this one thing here almost knocked me out of the game?
It was very early on. So when I first started so I consider this business that I have today having started in 1997, but truly I started in 1996. And in 1996 I started with a co-founder, and we were about 3 months into it, and we had very different styles, and there was a little bit more emotional volatility on her end than there was on mine, and she clocked me, hit me.
Wow.
And to me that was the biggest wake-up call I ever had. I was just like, wow. That concept of going into business with a friend, and that concept of kind of pursuing a dream together, really occurred to me that, I needed to trust myself, and if I was going to do this, I was going to have to not do it on my own like forever, but I needed to have the fortitude to do it myself. But what happened at that moment, I got really scared. I was like, well, maybe I'm not fit for this. Maybe this is, the higher power giving me a sign to say, run for the hills, don't do this. And I took about 2 months, which then put us into 1997, and was just like, am I going to do this? We dissolved that company, and then I started my own. But that was probably my turning point that really fortified me for this business.
For your business.
Correct. And it really told me that, because I had to make a really big decision at that moment, because it felt easier when I had someone doing it with me, but when I was out on my own and that was it, I was going to do it and pursue it, I really had to sort of go through that process.
And then, the funny thing, and obviously, I'm from San Francisco, so, being from
New York.
Being New York, right? So, in San Francisco, there's a mindset in the valley, Silicon Valley, of you got to have a founder, you got to have a co-founder, right? You have to have this co-founder. If you're going to start a business, and you're going to, grow the business, you're going to get VC funding or angel funding, you've got to have a co-founder. And a lot of people are afraid of what you said, that whole saying, let me step out and be this person where it's all relying on me, right? I remember, when I got married, it was a situation for me. I was trying to lose weight. I was, 70 pounds higher than I am right now. And my wife, I was just waiting for my wife to, come lose weight with me. And until you do it, then I felt like I was waiting for that situation to happen. And when you become independent of anybody else's desires or goals or visions or decisions, then and it gives you a little bit more clarity to say, what do I need to do to be whoever I need to become? And I think that's super cool, for you to be a founder, a lone founder, a solo founder, and have made it past all of the difficult times, because like you said, creating that emotional, fortress around yourself. So that's pretty cool. So tell me the moment that you felt like, I made it. I'm here. I feel like, I've arrived.
I've had a couple of those moments, and they still happen. Because I think that arrival kind of continues. But I really think one of the big moments was, and it was kind of far into the career, there was two. One was, I was doing a job for a major Fortune 100 company, and it was really a big job and a tremendous honor. And it was a discreet referral, because they didn't want anybody to take advantage of the press opportunity, because of the sensitivity around what they were doing. But that was a really big moment for me, because when that event was done, and the founders of that organization and family members of that organization, which were part of the founding family, and then the executives came over to me, who at the time was sort of I was in my late 20s, just about to turn 30. I mean, it was a really proud moment for me. And I think another one was, we did a fashion show with all the leading fashion houses in the world. Everybody from Elie Saab to Donna Karan to Tom Ford was there. Everybody you can think of. And we worked with Valentino's fashion show designer and produced that event from start to finish. It was a charity event, but that was a spectacular event, because it was just a spectacle. Beautiful, great production. It was flawless. The client was thrilled. The fashion houses were thrilled. And that was a big moment, too, because I was like, yeah, I did that. I mean, it wasn't just me. There was a whole team involved, and I have tremendous colleagues and tremendous vendor support. But that was a great moment.
Yeah.
You know, where you really felt that was a multi-million-dollar, just phenomenal event.
Yeah.
You know, from start to finish.
Do you ever get a little worried? You know, you get a budget, and the budget's in the millions of dollars, and you're like, all right, I need to make sure I don't overspend. I need to make sure this event looks amazing. I need to make sure that the customer is happy. Does it, ever get any worry there? Like, all right, I got to make sure that this becomes perfect. Like, are you a perfectionist in that process?
Yeah, it's funny. I pursue perfection. I think perfectionist is a hard one to kind of capture, right?
Yeah.
Because you got to launch the product in order to determine if it's perfect or not.
Yeah.
So from where I sit, do I have concerns along the way? Yes, but what drives me is just the passion around the projects. I mean, these are great projects. A lot of them have tremendous impact on the universe and the people that they support and serve. So as a result, tangentially we get to be a part of that, and that is really great. So I worry from the perspective that I do want it to be flawless. But part of why they hire me is when it's not flawless, that I can fix those problems. And I really love that too. I mean, as a company, that's really what we pride ourselves on.
Yeah.
And what we're really good at is, driving a budget, spending wisely, understanding what success looks like, and then also making sure that we drive towards those results. And so that's really, I trust that process in this company. We're very good at it, and we do it really well.
Yeah.
So now the circumstances that can take place on site, right? Oh my gosh, there's so many things that can happen, and that's where my worry is often.
Gotcha.
Is that you can plan it perfectly,
but
how you planned it on paper and how you designed it might not exactly be how it turns out, and so those are the things. The variables that take place on site is probably where my biggest worry lies.
Okay, so let's talk about this. You live in D.C.
Yep.
Capital of the United States, and it's definitely a male-dominated state. It's definitely we live in a male-dominated world, and a lot of people don't really, they're not willing to admit that there are certain segments of a population that don't get the same shake that everybody else gets. And I did a video about about women succeeding in the marketplace. I actually till today I think that's like my highest viewed video, right? And so I'm excited. I want to hear from you as a female entrepreneur, as a woman in the marketplace. What do you see the state of the union there? As far as women being able to go, because I have a firm belief that women have way more value than we as a society give them when it comes to business, entrepreneurship, stepping into roles that men have traditionally dominated. So tell me about that. Tell me about what your feeling is towards where we are as a society and what we need to do to get better.
So I'll give you, I'm very sensitive to the fact that you are right. There are segments of the population that, aren't always served equally, and I will never deny that. From my own personal experience, I've never really bought into that, though, and I only say that because, I come from a background of, sort of mixed on a number of levels. I've lived overseas all my life. I've lived in different kind of countries. My mom is actually Jamaican. My father's from California. So for me, I've just never felt that, the only ceiling above my head is the one I have put there. And so I've never viewed the world from the perspective that there's some limitation out there for me, or there's some limited expectation around that for me. I really believe that if I've had any limitations, it's the ones I've created for myself, and my vision isn't big enough. So that's kind of the perspective that I personally take. So I haven't felt a tremendous amount of barriers in my life.
So would you give that to women? Would you tell women,
yeah, I would just say,
this is the mindset that you have to have?
Yeah.
Because some women have hold on to that and say, I can't move forward because people look at me in a certain way.
What I would say is I'm not privy to everybody's personal experience, but what I would say absolutely, and what advice I would impart to women, and quite frankly to anyone, is your limitations are truly your limitations. So if you decide that those are no longer limits for you, and you can deal with sort of that perspective, then I really do believe you can move beyond it. I mean, whether you're, I was reading to my son about he wants to learn how to surf, and he saw a young woman who was a great surfer, but her arm got bitten off by a shark, and he was like, was she ever able to surf again? So we looked her up, and she's surfing champion, you know, and someone else might say I could never surf again, whereas she's out there surfing and still winning medals. So to me, again, does she have a disability? Is there a disadvantage there, or do people even maybe think that, oh, she's an easy target, we're going to crush her because she only has one arm, so maybe her balance is a little off, and she's crushing it.
Yeah.
So as I say, I think it's how, again, kind of back to how you fortify yourself around the world. I mean, I believe that I have unlimited opportunity as a person. And it's not to say that I won't come across obstacles as a person. As a woman, as a short person, as a middleweight person. I mean, there's many obstacles that I'll come across, but But I will make the determination if they will stop me or not. Yeah. And that's kind of my just general view of the world. Yeah. And again, I don't take away from anybody their personal experience because everyone's had a different viewpoint, but that's my belief.
And I absolutely agree with you. I feel like we put our own limitations regardless of what the rest of the world might feel. What value you bring to the table. If you decide that your value is higher than the value that they put, then you'll always supersede that value that they put on you. So I absolutely agree with you there. Okay, so I know you wrote an article recently about millennials, right? And the article made me smile, it made me chuckle, right? Because obviously I'm a millennial, okay. Right? So tell me what you think. What's your views on millennials in 2015? And
I love millennials. I have a company of 30 full-time employees, and I would say half are millennials, about half, maybe a little more even. Millennials have gotten a bit of a bad rap, and I think the world is in a transition. You've got 5 generations. Different generations in the workplace essentially, or in the world today. And so I think we're just in a transition, and it's really easy to pick on the millennials because they're a little bit, they've got a different vibe, right? But the reality is they look at the world very differently, and people tease them about words like, oh, I'm looking for work-life balance and this, that, and the other. But the reality is balance is kind of an important thing. I mean, how it plays out in work and life, I won't debate now because I have my own opinion on that. But in terms of kind of the things that they're thinking about and the things they're talking to us about, or you're talking to us about, I mean, I think they're really driving innovation. They're driving creativity. They're making demands of people. They're not just accepting, like the world as Gen Xers or baby boomers, you just did what you were told in a lot of ways, right? In the workplace especially. And they're saying, no, I want to question the status quo. Why are we doing it this way? Why don't we think about it this way? Why don't we try this? And they're just driving they're driving a much more collaborative environment, which I love, especially in the office place. I mean, they're willing to infuse their opinion. They want to be heard. I mean, I like anyone who's fighting to be heard. I think that's a really big attribute, and it tells me they have something to say and they have the confidence to say it. So they've had a tremendous influence on my company and how we're moving forward. Tremendous.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So let's talk about your whole. What would you say is, as an entrepreneur, almost 20 years in business, having Fortune 100 companies? There's a ton of entrepreneurs most of the people who watch this, our videos or in our community, are people who are trying to start a business, trying to build a business, trying to grow and scale their business. And so when they look at somebody who's getting contracts from Fortune 100 companies, knowing that that's something that they aspire to get to, what's 3 skills that you would say is like, these skills are necessary in order to be a successful entrepreneur?
I would say first is, understand how you're going to serve the community that you want to serve. So if I'm an event planner, make sure I'm the best event planner there is. Make sure that I am constantly working on evolving my skill set around my core business. So that's one. Because if that's the service I provide, I want to be the best at it. I think the second is, I would say a connector. Make sure that you're out in your community or you're out in a world that's mingling with the people that you ultimately want to serve. So whether that's you joining your local trade, board of trade or your chamber of commerce, or attending conferences where executives will be, trying to speak at those around your expertise that's going to serve them. I think that's the other thing. So make sure you're connecting with the right kind of people and providing them and meeting them. The third is a communicator. I mean, I think ultimately it doesn't matter what you do. I mean, I don't care if you're an engineer and writing code at the end of, or you're an event planner, or you're an investment banker. It doesn't matter. You've got to be able to communicate with people. You've got to be able to talk about who you are. You've got to be able to talk about what it is that they do. You've got to listen, which I think is steeped in being a good communicator. You've got to be able to listen because you've got to understand what it is they're trying to tell you and how they're trying to articulate their goals. So to me, that's a skill that I think is invaluable. So I would say work on your skills in terms of your professional skills as it relates to your business that's going to serve the community, your niche, and then the second is being a good connector, being savvy in the way to connect with people, social media, live, anyway, that way, networking, and then the third being a good communicator.
Got it. Future, 10 years from now.
So 10 years from now, and again, we're grappling with that right now. I mean, the goals both for the company and for myself. One is to position ourselves as really the premium brand within the event space that serves the nonprofit association and leading nonprofit and leading associations in Fortune 100 market. I mean, that's hands down still in that space, and elevating our visibility within that community. I think the other piece of it, though, is really being a thought leader and an influencer within our industry and also in the entrepreneurial community. That's a big goal for us as an organization and for me personally. And then also, I'd like to just, on a personal note, exercise a little bit more of my own creativity, since I don't really produce events as much now. I really run the business. Yeah. And my project leads and my directors and managers handle the production side. I'd really like to be writing, and be on the speaker circuit, developing curriculum, and doing some of that.
Got it. Okay. So what about 10 years into the future for the marketplace as a whole, the business? Like, what do you see, or where do you see the business markets going? Where do you see, not just your industry, but just in general? Like, where do you see, what do you feel like the next phase of business is, over the next 10 years?
Really good question. It's hard to have the crystal ball, but to me, I think the millennials are going to have a tremendous impact on how business is how commerce is done. Yeah. I think that is going to be a very different transaction than it is currently. I think things are going to be, and it's part of my industry as well, but I think things are going to be much more experience-based. I think in terms of not only the event world, but in terms of how we're collaborating and how we're connecting. I know people are talking about, social media is a trend that's going to disconnect people from the human interaction. I actually think, and it's proving out in our industry because it's a barometer of that kind of thing. I see the personal connection becoming even more and more intimate as time goes on. I think traditional media and all of that is already on the outs. I think it's going to be gone in 10 years. I mean, I think, the way people are going to be consuming information in a very, very different way. I think the traditional ways of selling is almost going to be obliterated entirely by the time we get out 10 years from now. I think and even as a small business, I have to grapple with, do I develop a sales department, or is it really more is marketing, or is it social media? Is it a digital strategy? I mean, there's going to be a new way of doing business. I think the corporate structure of business is going to change and have different needs to serve the market. Absolutely. Which is exciting. But it is a little bit, you feel like you're playing catch up a little bit. Because some of the positions haven't even been developed. Yep. There's not even curriculum to develop the kind of person that really needs to serve a company well. Like a salesperson today really should be kind of half digital strategy, half email marketer, or a quarter email marketer, and a quarter traditional sales. I mean, it really is a different ballgame than it once was.
And it's scary because when you look at traditional education, it doesn't really set you up.
Don't get me started.
It doesn't set you up to get that, because by the time, education catches up to where the market will be in another place, 10, 15, 20 years from now. And I know a lot of people, especially in the Valley, a lot of people are on top of educational reform and hoping that we set something up to set our kids up for success in the future.
Financial literacy, entrepreneurship, two things that really are missing in schools that should be in schools. I mean, I look at my kids and I think by the time they're in 7th or 8th grade, I mean, I've got to figure out a way to infuse that piece of them. And I'm actually donating my time to some organizations that actually support those initiatives in schools because I want to see that across the board. because it's really important in terms of setting yourself up. I love math and I love science and I love English and Spanish and all the languages and all of that, and I don't want, or the arts, I don't want to take any of that away because I do like that holistic approach. But those financial literacy and entrepreneurship that are missing are really critical, that they should be learning as skills now.
And the way I look at, when I look at education, the biggest thing I feel like is we create processes where we determine intelligence based off of really only two facets, which is really, it doesn't really give the full a picture of the human experience, because it's either you're good in math or you're good in written and verbal, and that really is the put together makeup of your intellectual IQ, right? So what about the people who are creative? Does that mean that, what about the people who are great in engineering or great at coding? There's so many different aspects of the human experience that I feel like is not being caught. And so some people, you get caught in the outskirts where you don't really fall great into the math category. You don't fall great into the, vocabulary and written and all of that category. But you fall great into this one category. But according to everybody else, you don't have a high intelligence. So that's something that it bugs me. I mean, there's so many things about the educational process that bugs me. But so let me ask you this: what do you define success as? Because a lot of people, some people say success means I make a lot of money. Other people say success means I'm where I want to be spiritually. Some people say success is where I have my body together. I mean, what is like your definition of success? For me, my definition is more of a holistic approach of am I striving to be the best in all areas of life? And that, that's what I look at as, success. Am I doing all of the things necessary to become great in every area of life? So, what would you say is, when I look at my life, this is how I know I'm successful?
It's more along the lines of kind of how you define success. I mean, I look at from the perspective, again, very holistically, of my best self. Yeah. Am I pursuing my best self at all times in every facet of my life, personally, professionally, within my family, within how I'm serving my community, within my business, directly with my relationships. I mean, financially and really spiritually, in all ways. And I'm not there in a lot of places. First of all, I'll probably never be there. I'll always be pursuing, which is good, because if I've stopped pursuing, likely I'll be dead. Yeah. And I hope that doesn't happen for a really long time, knock on wood. But, there's areas that need more attention than others, and, I pivot according to sort of, where I feel like there's a deficit around that. But, I mean, that's really my definition is, it isn't just, for me, if it was just financial, I would feel quite empty in a lot of ways. Yeah. So it really is just looking at that spectrum and making sure that spectrum is really big. And pursuing in all those avenues.
Got it. So what would you, as an entrepreneur, let's just say you had to start over as an entrepreneur. What would you change?
That's a great question. If I had to do it all over again, I think I would have been more aggressive. I would have been a little less scared. I think, the fear factor played a role in my my trajectory. It was very manageable for me, which is great. So I'm very glad I took the pace that I did. But I think if I was to do it again, I would have sped it up a little bit in terms of what I pursued. I would have made my vision bigger earlier, and then I would have started a few other things earlier in my 30s. Whereas now at 45, I'm starting some new, working on some new companies and some curriculum and some other things. But there's no reason I couldn't have done that earlier, other than fear was a little bit in my way. But now with hindsight and a little bit more comfort in recognizing that, the fear is just a thing. It's in your mind, a figment of your imagination. I mean, it doesn't really have to start or stop you.
Got it. Okay. So here's my favorite question. My last question is always my favorite one. And it's wrapped around history. If you were to go back in history and meet one person, anybody in history, who would that person be and why?
That's a great question, too. I probably right now would say Napoleon Hill, and it's only because I just finished reading Outwitting the Devil, and I had a lot of questions for him. So I think, I think his story resonates with me so much because, he was a normal Joe, right? And he was just a regular guy. He had a little bit of an opportunity, and he leveraged that into something much larger than himself, but he went through so much self-doubt and so much, failure, that I would love his insight in all those conversations that he had with all those people, because I can't pick all those people because that's more than one. So I think I'd probably pick him because I'd glean so many insights from so many, and also have the sort of the fortune of talking to him about his own sort of personal perseverance around his failures. But I think that's just because I just really finished the book as well. But.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time. I know that you're busy, and it's exciting to get a chance to hear a little bit more about your story. And I'm looking forward to the next chapter, and hopefully at some point in time us working together some more.
Yeah, vice versa. A great pleasure. Thank you, Eugene.
Is that you need to hustle hard. I mean hard. I mean, you gotta put the work in and the effort in. And a lot of times I hear people say, hey Eugene, so I want to do this business and I'm excited